Welcome back to Mik'd Up. We are excited to introduce our next guest. He has been on the show before. He is an LSU fan. He is also the voice of SEC football on ESPN, SEC sports on ESPN, excuse me. I don't want to pigeonhole him to one sport. He does all sports. Peter, I appreciate you coming back on the show. We are excited to ask because we are getting asked a whole bunch, and I am jealous of your ice cream. Like, I am what's your flavor? What's your flavor?
You did so sexually.
Crushing it.
What's your flavor?
I know. Like, so the kid, I don't even know. It's something that the kids had, and I'm like, you guys need to stop eating so many damn desserts at night. And then I put them just right to bed for this interview, and I'm like, holy hell, I need to get one of those things. So, like, they're going to be all pissed off tomorrow when they show up and there's none left, because I don't think I'm stopping at one, boys.
Oh,
like,
no,
I'm going deep into these.
Is this
things.
are these the pre-made cones though? Like, you didn't make the cone, like it was already made with the wrapper on top, everything.
Hell no! Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, literally, the wrapper is right here. Like, I'm not happy with my life right now, but I mean,
but are you though?
I got the dad bod stuff working. No, I actually am. Screw the kids.
Hey, I am super jealous, but let's. I know we don't have to be long. I appreciate you coming on. Let's jump right into it, man. Before we really get into the LSU stuff, I want to talk about the SEC as a whole, right? And you talked about it today. You posted some stuff on Twitter about how everybody's talking about the SEC being down and blaming the quarterbacks. And you said you don't think it's the quarterbacks is the main issue. That is an issue. That's not the main issue. You said that the secondaries are getting cooked. Go into that a little bit because there's a lot of turnover. I think it's the most turnover the SEC's had in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think, even going back to even SEC media days, we started looking at like, man, are these quarterbacks as good as we had in the past? Like Burrow in 19 and Tua in 2020, Bryce Young, and even Stetson over the last couple of seasons. And I'm like, all right, well, yeah, maybe they aren't that good on paper or transcendent. But I'm like, that wasn't the case that got our ass beat in all these games for the SEC, right? It was, the quarterbacks could have scored 40 points, but guess what? It wouldn't have been enough because, listen, A&M's secondary got burned. LSU's secondary got burned. Even look at Alabama and what Quinn Ewers was able to do. So I kind of look at it and go, well, wait a minute. Like, the SEC has always hung its hat on damn good secondary play, right? Winning the line of scrimmage, which a bunch of our teams didn't do, and the secondary play was subpar. And I look at this and I go, man, it always seemed like at LSU we had the next Patrick Peterson, right? We had the next Honey Badger. We had the next Derek Stingley. Who's that cat right now, right? It feels like it's more transfers. So, I think for me, that's one of the things I want to look forward to this weekend against State is, hey, does Denver Harris play a little bit better, right? Are they moving around guys in the secondary a little bit more to make them feel more comfortable? So I think it's too easy to say it's quarterback play. I think it's ultimately the secondary that's let the SEC down.
Yeah, and you talked about this. For me, it's not even about them not being in the right positions or not covering guys. It feels like they're almost like they're confused sometimes, or they're playing so far off because they don't want to get beat, and so when they do get stuff underneath, they're not attacking, and they're not able to make a tackle until it's 15 yards down the field. And I think that I guess that comes with experience and just being in the system a lot more. You mentioned something, and I think it was very interesting because I haven't heard someone say it the way you said it. You compared Jalen Milroe to Harold Perkins, right? And not because of the athleticism, but they're both athletic in their own right, and they're both play different positions, but the way they're being used. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, that pissed off a lot of people, especially in Alabama.
I'm sure it did.
Which it happens, right? It's not the first time I pissed off anybody from Alabama. It's not a big deal. It happens. Because I looked at it and I'm like, all right, do I think Jalen Milroe is a bad quarterback? No, I think that he has made some bad mistakes, but I also think that I go back and look early into that game, in the Texas game, and they were kind of had a couple of design runs for him, got him out of the pocket, made him more of a threat. And I think one of the things that they've worked with him on is keeping his eyes down the field, right? Like not trying to be a run-first quarterback, trying to process a little bit, but that's tough to do, right? I mean, like, Jalen Milroe is an instinct player. He sees something, he feels something, he takes off, and his athleticism is off the charts. And I start thinking about it, I'm like, dude, that's the same thing that's going on with Harold Perkins right now, right? LSU is asking Harold to do something that's not just the number one instinct, which is, hey, ball snap, and I'm going to go raise hell, right? It's having to think, it's having to process a little bit more, which has got to be very difficult for any person, to change those positions. And I looked at it, is the idea of like, I understand the change for Harold Perkins, right? Like when you're pitched to go to the LSU or to any SEC or any college football program, what did they tell you? They tell you that you come here, you're going to win games, but we're going to get you stronger, bigger, faster, and you're going to develop you to play in the next level, right? Like that's the biggest sales pitch. And I think they realize that he's a little bit undersized, Harold Perkins is, to be just a wreck shop defensive end. So they're like, all right, we want to teach you how to play inside linebacker or even middle linebacker, because with those skills you have, if you can learn the linebacker position and some coverage, buddy, sky's the limit. Yeah. You'll make $1 billion in the NFL. I think that transition has a little bit harder. We've seen it over the first couple of weeks. And at some point, Matt House and Brian Kelly, and I think Brian Kelly has already said that they're going to switch that up a little bit. You have to decide what's best for the development of Harold Perkins on the next level versus what's best for LSU football winning games on Saturdays.
Yep.
Peter, much like last year, like the game was played, it's great for early hype in the season. It gives you a lot of anticipation going into the year, but because of what the SEC schedule is, by the end of it, it'll be gone and forgotten and not really remembered what you actually played to start the year. Much like last year, coming into that game, do you think, even though they were rated obviously a top 10 team to start the year, do you think we were looking at and not really giving due to what they actually played to open the year in that Florida State team?
Yeah, I mean, I think it surprised everybody, because I think we go back and look at last year, we looked at Florida State going, listen, both teams came out and just puked all over themselves early in that game. It was like LSU could not have played any worse, and then FSU could not have played any worse in the second half. And you look at this, and both teams are like, man, that was just a disgusting pillow fight that somebody had to win. And so I think both teams had each other's attention going into this opener. But I've been saying this on all the shows, and people can sitting there going, oh, how you doing as an LSU fan? I bet it sucks. And I was like, truth be told, I feel better right here, right now on September the 13th of 2023 than I did after 2 weeks of 2022, right? Because after last year, after week 2, I'm sitting there going, I mean, I guess maybe we'll figure it out, but maybe we'll go 7-5, 8-4. And guess what? You end up beating Alabama. You end up going to Atlanta. And so you saw that team develop. And so I look at this and I was like, hey, I think FSU is for real. I think you play with them and you shot yourself in the foot and you should have kicked their ass in that first half. Yep. And then guess what? You got it handed to you in the second half. That's not an excuse. The better team beat you fair and square. But I still saw enough goodness where I don't know, man, I'm just an idiot. I'm sitting there and I go, well, I think I feel better about this team through week 2 than I did last year. But it's all for naught if you go out there at 11 a.m. and you screw up like you did against Tennessee in right off the bat, and all of a sudden Starkville is rocking. Like LSU has a better roster, I believe, top to bottom than Mississippi State. I think they have a lot more of a pedigree and experience from a coaching staff standpoint, and so by all accounts, you should be able to go in there and beat, albeit a veteran Mississippi State team. I mean, this is 27 of the last 31 tries. Yep. I mean, LSU has beaten Mississippi State. So there's a lot at stake right now. And you win this game, then all of a sudden you feel better against Arkansas, who may not have Rocket Sanders back. And then you win that game, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, we're in a good spot. We learned our lesson from FSU, and we're moving forward.
And we talked about this earlier. I think that the way the SEC schedule has set up for LSU is I think that it's a really good progression getting to those bigger games, right? Like you go to Mississippi State, it's a tough game. It's on the road. It's 11 a.m. But like you said, talent-wise, obviously, I think LSU matches up. That it's not really comparison top to bottom talent-wise. Then you play Arkansas at home. They have a quarterback who's been there for a few years, a little bit tougher of a schedule or of a game, but you're supposed to beat them. And then you go to a ranked team on the road at Ole Miss who came in as a 7th-rated team, and you beat their ass at home last year. So they obviously are trying to beat you with, Lane Kiffin, who likes to troll everybody. So I think the way it's set up sets up well for LSU to progress forward. Going into this weekend, you can talk on that.
Real quick, let me add to that, right? So And again, I can see the words almost coming out of my mouth like a thought bubble and going, that's a dumbass thought. But yet here I am telling you it. That I would rather lose that way against FSU in the opener and truly understand where the deficiencies are right off the bat than, hey, have this happen in week 4 against Arkansas or Ole Miss where you're reeling.
100%.
And you don't have that game like a Grambling to get right. And you don't have an opportunity to get right. So for me, again, I'm sugarcoating it, I guess, but I would rather have that moment where you realize what your weaknesses are early as opposed to it happening in the middle of the season and all of a sudden the wheels really come off.
Yep, no doubt. And obviously, LSU fans are very calm and they keep their cool and they don't over-exaggerate anything.
Sure,
right? They would handle that very well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, middle of the season. Going into Mississippi State, obviously.
rational.
Yeah, they're very rational, especially with the quarterback battle. And I'm not even going to ask you questions about that because I don't think there should be a quarterback battle. And there's no – just –
he can't help himself. Look,
I can't. It's so frustrating to me. But anyway.
Peter, give your take.
No, don't give your take on that. Or you can if you want.
No, I mean, listen, it's Jaden Daniels. I mean, Jaden Daniels got you to Atlanta.
Right.
I mean, like, to me, that it's Jaden. Jaden's not the one who gave up a boatload of points against.
No, apparently he is to
right?
the
Like,
fan base.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, the backup quarterback, no matter if it's at LSU or anywhere, is always going to be the most popular dude, right? Like, because that guy is always the perception he's going to be better. I mean, yes, we saw Nuss whenever he came in and played well, but, I'm not willing to take a guy that took this team to Atlanta and looked really damn good and beat Alabama unless I start seeing, man, there's some real struggles. Now, Zach Arnett, who's a really good defensive coordinator, saw, hey, man, they have some issues. And you want a different look, maybe you go down that route. But, I mean, this is Jaden Daniels' squad. And I think even Nussmeier prepares himself to understand that part.
Completely agree. Couldn't agree more. We talked about that a lot. They go to Mississippi State this weekend as a fan, right? Obviously, you cover football. You watch SEC all around. As a fan, though, of LSU, what do you need to see them do at Mississippi State and come away with after this game where you can go home and say, you know what, I'm very confident on what LSU is going to do moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's just two things. I want to see Harold Perkins in a position to make some plays. I've been waiting all season long for Mason Smith and Harold Perkins and Wingo, right? Like, you get Mikie and that threesome, I'll put them up against any kind of trio of defensive players across the country right now. But I haven't seen them all click on the same day. And so I don't know what the hell State's offense is going to look like, right? Like, they go from this air raid offense. Right. Kevin Barbay comes from App State. And I almost feel like, like when you're trying to get like the shower right in a hotel where you don't know what the temperatures are. Like, I feel like they turned the faucet on too much and now they're trying to run the ball a lot. So I think that they revert a little bit back to the pass happy team that they were because they were trying to figure that out. But I want to see them be aggressive and get after the quarterback and get after Will Rogers. That's number one. And number two, I'd love to see them be able to run the ball. Like, you just can't be one-dimensional in this conference or in college football in general. And I thought there were signs of that against Grambling, but, I mean, frankly, who knows? And this is actually a really good litmus test because, I think Arnett and those guys have a stout defense. And I think the interior part of that defense has got a lot of guys that have been there before. They're solid. And so I'm like, show me that you can run the ball up the middle if needed, because you're going to need that when you go up against an Alabama. You're going to need that if you go up even against Ole Miss in a couple of weeks. You're damn sure going to need it if you happen to face Georgia in the SEC championship game. If you can't do it against State, then, buddy, I think you got some big problems.
I'm glad you brought up Mikie, Mason, and Harold and how we haven't seen them all click all together on 3 games. Obviously, they haven't even all played together. It's been 1 game they played together. But do you think being able to actually get them all 3 playing well will kind of give us a better idea of what we have on the back end and at the other linebacker spots as well?
Yeah, I mean, because at that point, you're always going to wonder what you are at your best. We've kind of seen what they are at their worst, right? Like when Mason Smith wasn't there, Harold Perkins was kind of neutered in that inside linebacker position. And guess what? And not having Denver Harris, you kind of got exposed, right? But again, Like, to me, that's what has to happen. And I know people complaining, but I'm like, Matt House has forgotten more about football and his pinky than I'll ever know. Like, I'm going to ride or die with that guy. I thought he was one of the best defensive coordinators, and I was ecstatic when LSU got it. And so I just think that's why that first game against FSU was important, to figure out where, kind of the probe where the weaknesses are, because I guarantee you everybody's going to look at that tape in the second half and go, we can push them around. Okay, that's weird. It all goes back to the idea of, it was just weird not seeing LSU have a freshman or sophomore cornerback that was recruited and developed, and a guy that we couldn't wait to watch. Like, you can't call yourself DBU when you sit there and you're fishing through the transfer portal for guys to fill out the roster. Like Omar Speights, I think it was great. It's like, hey, we need a guy we can plug and play, right? But when all of a sudden you're like, how do we get depth and how do we get starters? And you got to go to the transfer portal. I don't know. It just doesn't feel like LSU football. It feels like other people football. It doesn't feel like 225 football.
Couldn't agree more.
Real quick, we'll get you out of here. What you mentioned a lot of what I think leads me to this question is, when you see the roster from Game 1 and Game 2, how much do you think it changes after you've seen Lance Hurd play some snaps on the offensive line? You see Chris Hilton flash. You see Ashton Stamps get in. You see Denver Hilton get in. I feel like a lot of LSU fans and people around the LSU program that are covering it, whether it be nationally or locally, are saying, oh, that's what LSU is. How much do you think it changes from Week 1 to Week 6?
Yeah, I mean, I think it changes a lot from Week 1 to Week 2, right? I always talk to the guys here, and whether it's Gene Chizik or Marcus Spears or Booger, all those guys are like, bro, as much as you think you know about your team, it's not until you get punched in the mouth in Game 1 and you look at tape and be like, I thought we were this, but that was different in scrimmage than it is in the actual game. Right. And so, like, Hurd is an interesting situation, because it almost felt like they were a little bit more aggressive when he got a chance to play. And even Campbell, right? When he first got an opportunity, wasn't great, but then all of a sudden, hey, you give him a little bit more run and he's good. So I think it's just a development, and that's the fine line of having good, solid recruiting classes and when you think you can trust those guys. Because I know, like, as golfers, and this is a stupid. It even sounds stupid coming out of my mouth. Once again, like the 15th time I've said something dumb on this podcast.
No, I love this. We say dumb stuff all the time, so it's great.
Very much welcome.
Great. I feel like I'm at home.
There you go.
Guys make me comfortable in saying dumb shit.
There you go. I love that. Perfect.
Safe space.
But, like, there's certain guys that don't hit the ball well on the driving range, right? They just don't practice well. But you get them on the golf course, and they're just gamers. And I think that's part of finding out what that formula is like, man, I don't know what about, this guy doesn't shine in practice. I can't get him into the second. I can't get him third string. He's basically on the other football field, while the starters are playing on the real football field. But, man, if we ever got a chance to put him in, he shines. Like, there's just an it factor. And so that's why I know a lot of people don't like the Grambling games or the Southern games or the kind of smaller schools. But I love them kind of sandwiched in a Week 2 to where you can get some run from younger guys and be like, who has that spark? And I still think, I believe in this team that they got as much spark as anybody right now. Because not only the West, I think all the SEC is wide open. I still am a firm believer in Georgia that they're that good, but there's nobody else that's like, oh man, LSU is the 6th best team in the conference right now. I'm not buying that.
I completely agree. There's a ton of turnover. I wish I was the golfer that you just described. I'm the opposite golfer, though. I am great on the range, and definitely not a gamer on the course. Yes,
that's a mental aspect. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I'm here and not playing. That's why I'm here and not playing baseball anymore, because of this thing up here. But
that's why you don't play golf with me anymore either.
You need to go out to U Club and see Maneri out there playing golf every single day.
I have
twice a week.
I have my doubts on his handicap, but he tells me, I think he's I don't know what he's doing, but he tells me that he's playing from the member tees. I think he's playing from the white tees. I don't know.
Playing 8 days a week.
He's playing every day.
I ran into him last time I was in Baton Rouge. I ran into him and I was like, man, these guys are playing so damn slow because I like to play fast. And all of a sudden, like I'm like, well, all right, we'll hit up the snack bar or whatever we do, and all of a sudden I hear, "Oh shucks, is that Peter Bird?" I am the luckiest man to see the great Peter Bird. It was Maneri at his absolute peak.
Oh yeah.
And he was, gosh darn it, I just can't believe. What is the real freaking luck this in? Holy jeez, what a day! It was just all Maneri.
It couldn't have been more. Couldn't have been more Maneri. Dude, I appreciate you. We kept you a little longer. Before I let you go, right? We're gambling.
Yeah.
We're gamblers, right? Not great gamblers. I'm better in college football. I win my money in college football. I lose all my money in the NFL. So all the money that I win on Saturday, I lose on Sunday. That's just the way it works. So
yeah, I'm the opposite actually.
Well, then we should start
combine
forces at some point. Yeah,
exactly. Does LSU cover the 9.5 and the 26.5 spread with the Georgia and South Carolina game? It just feels like it's a lot. Do they cover? Does South Carolina cover?
That feels like one of those. That feels like one of those ones where I think LSU and State end up being like a 7-point game. Like I don't feel overly confident because I don't know this roster at 11 a.m. Cowbells, the whole deal. I think we're 5-0 over there in the early game. To me, it seems like if there was a play in there, it would be more of like the tease LSU down instead of like 9.5, tease it down to like LSU minus 2.5, like 7-point tease, and then teasing up South Carolina against Georgia. And actually, I wouldn't even do the Georgia South Carolina thing because I don't trust South Carolina's offensive line or even the defensive line at that point. I actually would rather do Florida and take Florida getting more points. So teasing Florida up. Teasing LSU down is the way I would go.
Okay, I'm gonna do that.
Right. You can't buy points. Peter Burns says.
Peter Burns is a lot more respectable than you, Lloyd. I trust his insight more than your insight. Debatable. In my mind,
only you could have seen
mind.
the delight on Lloyd's face when you talked about teasing just now.
Yep, that's okay. It's okay.
You're speaking my language, Peter. We'll get on a text chain.
Yeah.
Listen, parlays parlays will absolutely crush it. Like I've talked to people in Vegas and like the guys that used to run the sports book in Vegas, and they were like, we have this glimmer in our eye that we're all going to eat really good at the sports book that night whenever somebody comes up and wants to bet parlays. They're a little worried about teases because of the way that is set up. Okay. But they're like, when somebody wants to bet like a 2-team or 3-team parlay, we basically have decided that, you know what, we're eating steak for dinner tonight because it's just easy money. I'm
paying for their dinner. That's basically what he just said. I'm paying for all their dinner. Peter, man, I appreciate you. We'll have you on again. This is always fun. Next time you are in Baton Rouge, though, I actually am not far from the Course and U Club. I'd like to jump on there now.
We need to do it. I actually
member guest is coming up here soon.
Oh, you know what? I'm pissed off because my boy Rory Hebert is a member at Baton Rouge Country Club, and he's one of my best friends. I've known him from like 3 years old. Like we went to LSU games together growing up, and I have not got the invite to play in the member guest. And I have never, even though I played college golf, I have never once played in a member guest in my life.
Really?
Which blows my mind.
Are you a member?
Most of the time I'm.
It's true.
I'm a member at a club here in Charlotte, but the problem is normally it's during football season.
Yeah.
But I say that because Dari owes me a couple of shifts because I've worked some shows for him. So I want to go to an LSU road game this year, and I've never seen LSU play down in Oxford. So I feel like that might have to be a one where we pile up. I tell Dari he's working for the weekend, and I start hydrating now.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. And if I'm there, I'll let you know. Maybe I'll join the foursome behind you so that I don't slow you down. How about that?
Let's go.
Perfect.
I'm in.
Peter, I appreciate you, man. Have a great night. We'll have you on again.
Go Tigers.
Some cones for us.
That's it.